Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of DentistMetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. It can take months, if not years, for someone to decide that they're finally ready to own a practice. In the case of today's guest, he's gone from graduating dental school to owning 5 practices in less than 2 years. I'll also tell you that though it takes a certain amount of work ethic and skill set to be able to run successful practices, there's also no such thing as being truly ready to make the leap. Dr. Hunter Smith is a multiple practice owner. He's a contributor on DentalTown, and he posts some really great numbers related content and posts in response to showing people how to look at practices for purchase. So in this episode, you're going to hear how he's been able to grow so much in so little time. First, here are a few of the things you're going to hear about. You're going to look at what to look for to see if a practice is a good match for you to purchase, the time when buying a practice with the intention to grow doesn't make sense, the number one evaluating factor when determining a good startup location, where to start if you're looking to buy a dental practice, a problem you want to avoid as a multiple practice owner, the factor that matters the most, more than the dentist to population ratio, the number one problem that keeps a practice from growing, scheduling mistakes to avoid. At the end of the episode, you'll find out where you can get a bonus that includes the 3 steps to get started on finding a practice to buy. So be sure to listen all the way through this entire interview to get access to that. Now here's my interview with Dr. Hunter Smith. Hello, ambitious dentists. Today I have with us Dr. Hunter Smith. Dr. Smith is from the best state in the country, Arkansas. So he's a born and bred Arkansas. He's actually from the best corner of Arkansas as well, northeast Arkansas, where I'm originally from. Dr. Smith has a fascinating story of being able to be a multi-practice owner very early in his professional career. And I'm really excited to have him on today because I feel like he kind of just shot through the barriers to entry of being able to be a practice owner, or not only a practice owner early on, but being a multi-location practice owner very early on. He is the owner of Jonesboro Family Dental Group as well as the Southern Dental Group. I think I got those right, Dr. Smith. So, Dr. Smith, thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
So, if you aren't familiar with Dr. Smith, he has some of the best numbers-related posts on DentalTown that I've ever seen. He's always spot on with his analysis of dental practices. Almost to the point, I've seen a lot of posts in the past that are usually majority of the people that chime in are consultants. And I think that Dr. Smith has this really unique perspective of being able to weigh in and talk to people about how he looks at practices and how he would actually see that practice going on. So he gives a lot of time to the dental community, which is very commendable. So Dr. Smith, I commend you on that, number one. So if someone isn't aware of who you are, then can you give us an introduction to how you do this? Tell us when you got out of dental school. Tell us whenever you started your first practice or you bought into your first practice, and then how you moved into multiple practice ownership.
Sure. I graduated dental school in 2014 from University of Tennessee in Memphis. I wasn't an exceptional student by any means. I probably graduated. It doesn't really matter.
We'll keep that out of the throes of the internet.
Yeah, they graduated me. They can't take that back. So
I don't think.
No, I hope not. They did graduate me. I graduated in 14. I wasn't 100% sure on what I wanted to do outside of just get out and start making money. And I knew I had to go back home to Northeast Arkansas because my wife was not going to have it any other way.
Too smart.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did was I had 3 options coming out of school. One, to kind of join up with my now business partner in a startup that he had going here in Jonesboro, where I'm from, and or I could have joined a kind of a regional DSO type situation as an associate, and probably had some good guaranteed money on the front end. Or thirdly, excuse me, I could have had an opportunity to buy a practice. The reason that came up is my wife actually babysat for my now senior associate's grandchildren,
Uh-huh.
and it actually came up on a movie date one time with her and my now senior associate's wife and their grandkids. Is they kind of were talking about what I did and what he did, and she said I was about to graduate dental school, and she said, "Well, my husband is a dentist. They need to talk." So I just called him, asked what his plans were, and he had a transition that didn't quite go through. So he was set up for a transition, and it was my opportunity to come in and kind of pick up where that transition left off and maybe finish it out. Practice was a very good size, but it wasn't, an astronomically big where I thought that, and he wanted to work a little bit longer. So I didn't know financially what was better, having no experience between the associateship and the ownership. So I kind of went back and forth on the two. Honestly, looking back now, it's a no-brainer what to do. But I did go back and forth, and my wife actually told me that there's no way with my personality I could ever work for another human being. So I
Yeah.
took that to heart, and she said, "You do what you want to, but you're not the kind of guy who's going to go sit in a meeting and give an idea, and if it's not taken, then let it go lightly." And I kind of agreed, and that's both a good and a bad thing, I guess. And so I went ahead and and started the transition, and uh, graduated in May, got my license in June, and worked from June until August 1st as an associate here at the practice, and then bought August 1st.
So,
Um,
so 3 whole months.
yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. It's funny now looking back, and I got so extremely lucky with a number of things. One, he had hired a great transition company, which on the broker end can be both a hit or a miss. He
Uh-huh.
had hired Mercer Transitions, which is now, I believe, a part of Patterson. I don't know whether Patterson finished that deal or not.
Are they out of Memphis? Is that who?
Mercer was out of Arizona, maybe in
Okay.
California now. Definitely in Arizona when I did it.
Okay.
And they were great. And they're more of a full service transition company that uh, kind of giving a plug here, I guess, but they
That's
actually
fine.
start with an associate gig and then kind of escrow money for a down payment, and then look for a longer transition from associate to owner. In my case, the associate had already been through that first stage with Mercer, and Mercer was at the evaluation stage where they do a great job of putting a number on a practice, showing you how they got to that number,
Mm-hmm.
giving you a breakdown of all the schedules and the numbers behind a dental practice. So that was my first exposure to it. And looking back, I just looked at the thing and thought, well, these are professionals. That's what they said it's worth. That's what I'm going to pay for it. And there was no negotiation on our end at all. They came back and they said practice was worth X amount of dollars. I went to the bank and said I need X amount of dollars, and when we bought the first practice. So that was, and then with my senior associate, he's great. I had no idea what I was doing from a business or clinical standpoint, which I'm sure if any new dentist who is honest will tell you. And he walked me through a lot of stuff early in those first few months. So I was extremely fortunate with that.
Sounds like you went to a really good situation. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you had some issues. Now, as far as the financing goes, for being 3 months out of school, I know a lot of financing companies might have some issues with that. How did you get past that?
My now business partner is, and one of my best friend probably. He has really good connections here in town. As I guess is the best way to put it. And he had a strong relationship with one of the local banks here in town. They're local, but they're statewide. A bank, not a national bank by any means or anything, but and basically called and gave me a referral. Said that this guy's solid. He knows what he's doing. I had all that information from Mercer, which really helps on a bank standpoint, especially in front of their boards. Um, that showed a professional had evaluated the practice, and I honestly had no issue at all the first practice. Partly because of the referral, I think I had a really good meeting with the banker where I was able to clearly lay out my plans for the practice, and then
Hmm.
I had the documentation in place that made it there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of blue sky with a dental practice, but for any bank that has done something like that before, if you have that amount of information, I think they can see the value in it, regardless of experience level. And my senior associate planned on staying on, so they had a relationship with him as well, and knew that he was going to be here for production reasons.
So, what was the biggest lesson you learned in the time that you were being mentored by your senior associate at the time about the actual business ownership?
Yeah, that's a great question. I knew nothing. I had, no business. When I was in undergrad, I did the dental stuff, the sciences, and when in dental school you get a semester, and I did spend a lot of time in clinics speaking to the practice management teacher and asking the right questions. I think looking back, but for me, it was really just I followed his systems. He paid payroll biweekly, which I've since changed, but then he just showed me how to do payroll. He didn't use a payroll system, so he wrote his own checks to the 941 payments to the government. And he paid his own state taxes, which had to be done by the 15th of the month. And he just things like that, just telling me taxes are due here. We pay payroll here. Your marketing needs, none of us are marketing gurus in dentistry. And
we can all pretend that way, though.
Yeah, everybody. There's a lot of people that try for sure, but just little things like that. His main help was definitely from a clinical side, but from a business standpoint, it was just what it was like being a leader, what it was by being a business owner to an extent, and then I was able to kind of piggyback off of his ideas and put my own ideas in place to help grow the practice.
What do you think you would have done if the opportunity that arose hadn't arisen, given your tendencies to be a bad employee, which is what every entrepreneur is, by the way, is a terrible employee.
If I would have taken the associateship job, I would have been fired in 6 months, no doubt. No, honestly, I don't know. I probably would have been looking for a practice to buy. I don't think I would have got the experience that I did even in just the 3 months working with someone who knew I was going to buy his practice. Even if I was a 2-year associate or whatever, you would have to really take it upon yourself to spend a lot of time. Corporate, you have no chance. But if you were associating for a private doc, you would have to take it upon yourself to really bug him and really bug the staff and really learn the systems and really learn why they were doing certain things and when things were due, and just the software, the different software managements, and there's just so much that you would have to take upon yourself, and that I think I would have done that, but I can't guarantee it. Definitely 80% of the reason I am where I am is because I did make that decision to just take on our ownership regardless of what I knew or didn't know, and it turns out I didn't know. So,
hey, experience is a great teacher. I'll tell you that much. It's a fantastic teacher. So tell me, you're almost 2 years in now. Talk to me about, I'm sure you have a ton of people in DentalTown reach out to this. I'm actually just using my own thoughts on this, but what do you tell people that approach you and they're like, I'm 3 or 4 years out and I don't think I'm ready yet? Like, how do you become ready? Is there do you think that for these people, there's going to be a light switch one day, or what are your thoughts on that?
No way. I mean, I don't have children yet, I am married. So, but the old adage of you're never ready is the exact same with everything. Children, marriage, owning a practice. You don't know what you don't know until you get in there and do it. You're not going to, a light switch is not going to go off. You're not going to be suddenly like, I'm ready to own a practice. It's a mindset that you take, and it's like, I'm ready for this next stage in my career, and I'm just going to take it. And you're not going to know things. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to, the thing is, dentistry, luckily for a lot of us, is such a huge margin business that you really got a lot of wiggle room to screw up. And as long as you're not screwing up ethically or morally or physically on a patient, then the business side, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to lose a little money, but it's not going to be enough to cripple you. And as long as you take it upon yourself to learn that and learn from your mistakes, not get too down and not take it out on staff and patients and make those bad decisions, then ownership is ready for if you can put a burr on a tooth, basically.
So you've gone from being a single practice owner to being an owner in 5 practices now, correct?
Correct.
So 5. So if you're out there listening, we're less than 2 years in from graduation, and we're an owner in 5 dental practices. I'm sure there's a lot more down the line to come. So tell me how you went from saying, "Hey, I got one of these things. Now I should own 3 or 4 more." How did that come about?
I promise it wasn't the goal by any means. So what happened is Jonesboro, you're familiar with the area, is saturated. Probably not to the
Oh yeah.
extent of maybe some really really metro areas, but we are a saturated rural market with dentists, especially dentist churches and Mexican restaurants. We got in spades.
Oh, yeah.
So we made this, my business partner and I, he was going in as an associate with the plan to buy the same way I was or had already. And we still had senior associates on, and everything was going great. Everybody was making money. Everybody was happy. Everybody was productive. But as we sped up, as we got more productive as dentists and clinicians, we felt like there was opportunities for us to do more dentistry, which is, now I do way less dentistry than I did even when I first started. But then the goal was to do more dentistry. Um, so we just looked for a practice together. And let me backtrack a little bit. We actually had talked about, so I bought the practice in August of 14, and I was a solo doc just cruising along, thinking I had it all figured out from August until probably May of 15, and I had just the one practice and no plans of anything else. And then in May of 15, I actually ran into my business partner. We had started kind of reconnecting a little bit after dental school. And we were just sitting around talking, and, are you busy? Yeah, I'm busy. Are you satisfied? No. I mean, not really. I could do more. So we talked about things anywhere from, getting IV sedation and going to local dentists and doing their third molars to rental properties, which we did first, to starting up a clinic as a satellite office. We talked about all those ideas and settled on actually finding a classified dental on DentalTown for a practice for sale in Northeast Arkansas. And it was a big practice, had a lot of good things about it. The senior associate wanted to stay on, so we didn't have to work it full time, but it was big enough for us to go in and say, I can do 2 days here, you can do 2 days here, and we can kind of supplement our income that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really how we got started on the second practice. Our second, he had one, I had one, and our first one combined, our second one, individually. That's how all that got started. And from there, it was kind of a snowball effect. The plan for that practice was to be the other location we go to. And we started noticing that between the 3 of our practices, they all had similar issues. They all had similar problems. They all had similar easy fixes that were, the financial upside was significant. And we got in our heads that, hey, we're good at this, which we're probably not, but we got that in our heads anyways. Like we can branch out and do more. So since that one, we've kind of branched out and tried to apply our ideas to other practices, and we've seen similar success. So it's just snowballed from there. It's just practice after practice. And I think if you're looking for a practice, you really, really, really look, and you try to find the perfect practice, and then you find one. When you have multiple practice, they just beat you over the head. You get phone calls from everybody. Hey, you want to buy another one? Hey, it's like owning a house. Once you are known for owning rental property, everybody with rental property calls you. So since then, we've actually turned down several opportunities for more. So.
You say these things like you had this long analysis, these long discussions, and this big, these big ideas. And if you think back into it, guys, you bought in August. So that's literally a year and a half ago of 2014, yeah. And you've done all these things in a year and a half. So that's great that you've been able to actually implement and think. You had time to think about it and then do it, and you've already actually done all this. So that's great. So tell me about being a boss to somebody that is your senior.
Yeah. Let me give you a plug first, because I think you're doing something that you kind of briefly touched on it with the mastermind group and with your trying to connect dentists from other areas to just talk about things. Almost 100% of any success that me and my partner have had is because of each other, because we get in the truck and we just drive somewhere and we talk and we talk through ideas and will this work? Will this work? Oh, that makes sense. Here's an offshoot of it. Does that make sense? We would not be anywhere. We would both be solo practice owners sitting grinding beside a dental chair right now if we did not have each other. What you're trying to do with it, and we basically have our own little mastermind group here.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what we do together is what a lot of dentists miss out on because of what you talk about, regional competitiveness. Just think that they got some secret ingredient that makes their practice different, which it doesn't. And it doesn't matter about making a practice bigger. But just sitting and talking to dentists who have been through things, and we have senior associates, so those are part of our mastermind group too. And that's a point that you brought up. In this year and a half, it seems like so long ago because we talk about it all the time. I mean, we talk about dentistry and ways to make our businesses and practices better. So I think that anybody listening that is kind of on the fence about joining a group like that is missing the boat by not doing so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 1 + 1 is not cumulative whenever you're thinking about thoughts and ideas and brainstorming. 1 + 1 it becomes exponential at that point, rather than 1 to 1. A 1 to 1 exponent's not that good of a number, but it is absolutely. So yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, that's a very good context.
Yeah, so, and then back to your question about being the boss of someone younger. I think I again got just super fortunate the first time. He was determined to be a great employee. I think that he had been told that maybe he wouldn't be, so he went out of his way to be great for me. Just little things such as in meetings, I sit at the head of the desk now with the staff. Things like the parking spots. I got the first parking spot, and I said, "Doc, I don't need the first parking spot.
I can walk 2 more feet. Yeah. I can walk 2 more feet.
My legs are 50 years younger than yours. It'll be fine. I can handle it." No. It's an issue. So he went out of his way to be a great employee. He understood, I think, his strengths and weaknesses, and he understood that one of his weaknesses was not being a perfect business manager. And he didn't claim to be. He didn't want to be. A lot of older dentists don't want to be. So he my ideas were my ideas, and he felt that they helped the practice. So I got lucky the first time. Now I keep saying that, but I think a lot of it is, luck with finding the first practice, luck with the right senior associate the first time, knowing my future business partner well, and he having connections in the area. Things like this have to happen for things like what we're doing to happen so quickly. But you can still learn from it if you're other people, and look for that kind of senior associate. If you're planning on keeping a senior associate around, it's important to have the right one and not someone who's going to actively try to upend you or still exert his presence over the office. Since then, I think we've established the reputation enough that when we come into a practice, we have experience regardless of the amount of time with practices. Because if you have 5 practices and you've owned them a year, you've got a 5-year. You go through way more in 5 practices in 1 year than 1 practice will in 5 years. With staff turnover, with different patients and different problems and experiences. So since then, we've just the level of experiences is kind of been good. We've proved ourselves. Our changes have been productive to the office, so we really haven't had a lot of backlash at all from older doctors at all. So that's been nice.
I love that quote. I wrote it down. We'll go through more in 1 year and owning 5 practices than you'll go through in 5 years. And one practice. That's a good one. I like that one. So, okay. So tell me about whenever you guys have someone contact you, say that they might have a practice that is a potential acquisition. What do you do to look at and see if that is a good match for you guys as a purchase?
In any business, I think, and I'm not a business guru, but in any business that you're looking into, you need to weigh at a certain point, what is your time worth, what you're going to get out of it. So at our stage now, what our first thought is do we have the time? Do we have the clinical time? Do we have, and if we do have the time, is it worth the financial benefits? Goodness gracious, that is loud. So yeah, what was I saying? Oh, the time. So when someone approaches us now, it's not just like it was a year ago, when we had all the time in the world and we were trying to make the decision for what's best financially. Now you have to weigh that time and financial gain against each other. Um, if you're talking about individually and what makes a practice good, that's going to depend on what you want out of the practice. In our situation, almost all of our practices from here on out will be absentee owner or whatever term you want to use, associate driven locations. So you want strong hygiene base, you want easily reproduced production. Uh, you want good demographics always in any scenario. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. Easily staffed. If it's super rural, you're going to have a hard time sending an associate there. If it's in Jonesboro, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of people want to go to Lepanto to work.
No. For a variety of reasons, and one of them is the ruralness. But
by the way, guys, for you listening in that didn't catch a joke about an Arkansas town, we also have a town called Goobertown that is not too far away from where we both used to live. So, or he lives now. So
yeah, I have a practice in a town called Bald Knob.
So, yes. That sounds super normal to me, but everybody else is like,
Bald Knob. Yeah. Bald Knob, Arkansas, one of our practices is. But what we were talking about, the ruralness is affecting for finding an associate. Whereas if you're a family guy who's from the area who's looking at a practice to buy, and it's super profitable, and maybe the hygiene number isn't exactly 30% or whatever your guideline is, or the demographics are fair, but everybody in the whole town knows you. I mean, there's a lot of difference between what you're looking for as your first practice. I want to be a solo doc forever and work here until I retire and sell it, as someone like us who's looking at their sixth or seventh office and what it would take to purchase that office. So I think when looking at it from a multiple practice standpoint, you're looking at something different than if you're looking at it for your very first one. So it's important to know what you're looking for, what you're going to use the office for, and then how you're going to get out of it if you do need to.
So if you're going to go back and acquire your first ever practice, what would you be looking for?
Question I get a lot from younger guys, and it's a great one because I think I disagree with some of the other, really good DentalTown posters who have really good ideas. And then I think I kind of agree with some of the other ones that I really expect in this. I would want the very biggest practice that I could replicate the production of. And that's, you hear a lot of guys are like, I don't want to go into that much debt, or I don't want to take out that big of a loan. Will they even loan it to me? I'm a young guy. Maybe I should buy the $300,000 practice, a year and I'll grow it and I'll make it bigger. And that's never made sense to me, even when I didn't know anything, because why would you want to grow something that you can already buy that's ready? And it's relative in terms of the debt. The debt doesn't mean anything at that level. It's a percentage of your overhead. It's a percentage of, whatever you want it to be. And, I would much rather give someone $5 if they give me $100 than give someone $1 and they give me $4. Or whatever analogy you want to use, even if it's a higher multiple. If I gave you 1 and you gave me 20 and I gave you 50 and you gave me 100, I want to be the guy getting the 100 for 50. So the main important thing for a young dentist is to make sure that you can replicate what's happening in the practice. But if you can do that, then you want the biggest practice that you can possibly have. And I've had good experiences with senior associates, so maybe I'm kind of biased in that. But I would want the guy to stay around, especially if I was right out of dental school or AGD or anything like that practice. I do not get and will never get I'll buy a small one and build it up big.
The one the thing, the back whenever I was a younger guy, I would think about buying houses and, turning them around. And I think about doing all these little things that could be, entrepreneurial in the sense of like buying something from somebody and then eventually selling it to someone else for more. And I always remember something my dad told me about. He's like, well, if they haven't been able to sell it at the price that they're trying to sell it at now, what makes you think that you can sell it for more? And so the same line of thought kind of works in dental practices of, okay, I want to buy a $300,000 dental practice because I can grow it to $1 million. Well, what was that dentist doing so poorly that is going to propel you to $1 million? There would have to be something pretty profoundly wrong with that practice, and a heck of a lot of opportunity there to be able to grow that practice. And even then, it's not going to be a slam dunk. It's going to take a lot of sweat equity.
Yeah, I think you got to have both of those things you mentioned. You have to have both the opportunity, one, and then the mistakes that were being made, two, and the combination of those things making it to 300. And it can be either one that's doing it, and it may not be reversible, especially it's just not there one, and which I think I've mentioned this to people who've asked before. The number one thing, whether it's a startup, whether it's an acquisition, whether it's a merger, in any kind of purchase of dental charts, records, goodwill, locations, the demographics is by far the number one valuating factor, and whether it's, or if you want to look at it as a multiple of the EBITDA, or is it a good startup location? Is this a good merger for my practice? It matters. Are there human beings in that area? They're going to come sit in your dental chair and let you work on them. And that's marketing's real great unless you're marketing to 3 people. So it's that's by far the most important. And secondly, they got to be making the mistakes, which that probably happens in. Not to kid yourself, it happens in 100% of dental practices. There's a mistake being made.
Sure.
It's just, to what level that mistake's being made.
Absolutely. So, what do you think about startup practices? I mean, you've recently undertaken one, haven't you?
A quasi startup, yeah. The Ball and Knob office is, I guess it's not a really good example because there's no debt on it. It was basically a abandoned dental office ran by a company that was a medical company that really wasn't familiar with the dental scene. So we basically came in, leased the equipment, leased the building, leased everything in it, took their existing patients, their Rolodex, if you will, and then marketed it as a new dental practice, as a new brand, as a new private practice, and took our strengths combined with their existing Rolodex of patients. So similar. I think startups are even more reliant on demographics, obviously. I don't claim to be an expert in startups because I think for young dentists, especially, unless you really have a broad range of locations that you're willing to go and are really open to being rural, or really open to being where something's got a lot of future growth and not current growth, that you're way better off buying existing practice. The cash flow on the front end is just huge. So I would lean towards, when people have asked me to rank my kind of ideal starting point for a dentist, look, first time owner, always list a big, huge acquisition first. To the extent that you can replicate, it's always an important caveat. It doesn't matter if it's 10 million if you can only do one. So you got to make sure you can replicate. And secondly, I think then I would look at the one that's doing 300, 400,000 in a great demographic location. Then I would look towards a startup in a perfect demographic. I think it's a really good thing. You get to make it your own. You get to start it fresh. You get to put your systems in. You get to staff it the way you want to. But you're behind the 8 ball even more so than buying a slow practice and trying to grow it up, unless you have almost a guarantee of doing it, which you do in some demographics.
Very good answer. So if, most people ask the question of, if you were buying a practice today, or if you were starting a practice today, what would you do differently? So, and you have already answered those questions. So what I'd like to ask you is, what do you feel like is the right way for someone to start looking for a practice? Because you seem to be fine. At this point, they're able to, most of them come to you. I get a lot of guys that are searching for practices and they can never find one, or they say they can never find one. How would you go about working on a search, other than having your wife babysit for a lot of people's grandkids?
Yeah, your wife needs to get busy for sure.
Yeah.
I think, if I was looking for a dental practice, the first thing you got to be clear with yourself is, where can you live and will you live? That makes a gigantic difference in your options, obviously. If you have a broad range and you're able to move across the country and you're able to rural versus urban, then you have an advantage over everybody else. If your wife or husband, I guess, is dead set on living in a city, or I'm not going to a farmland, or I'm, that kind of thing, you're limited, and you're going to have to realize that that search may be longer for you. But where would I start contacting? Brokers are, to me, they do the appraisers, the appraisals and evaluation and all that stuff. But I think that should be on the buyer's end more than they make it. I think that they make mistakes, they tweak, and they don't necessarily always get it right. But what a broker is really good for is an advertiser. I mean, they're a real estate agent for practices. I would always start on the brokers' websites, the Paragons of the world, the Mercers, the wherever that's looking for to sell something. DentalTown Classifieds is how I found the second one,
Mm-hmm.
in a very rural market and small area, and it was on DentalTown. So I would always look at those broker opportunities first. I think another way, supply reps, especially older doctors, love their supply reps,
Oh yeah. Oh
despite the
yeah.
fact that they've been screwing them for hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, never once offering them a discount on anything.
Love it. Yeah.
They love their supply reps. So I would always get send a resume to a supply rep, send a letter that says you're interested in being a practice owner. They'll circulate it because they want your business after that's sold.
Mm-hmm.
Supply reps, brokers, cold calls and cold letters work. Dentists, I've heard stories of practices that the owner didn't even know he was ready to sell until he got that letter that said there was someone interested. And then he kind of evaluated his situation and said, well, maybe I am. Let's meet this guy. So all cold calls and letters just to evaluate the markets around the areas you want to live and see what opportunities are there, I think is the way I go about it. Now, once you find the location, that's an entirely different story on whether it's right for you or not. But, the first step is obviously finding an opportunity. And they're there if you're willing to travel and go rural. Uh,
Oh yeah.
they're beating me over the head right now. So
Yeah, the staffing is definitely is a hard part for multi-practice owners. I got a few clients that are, and they always talk about how the turnover in the associate position as well as the hiring in the associate position is very difficult sometimes. So I don't envy that problem to have. It's a tough one.
yeah,
So
I mean the people on DentalTown like to frequently remind me that I have not yet experienced a lot of associate turnover, because I do have a senior associate, and trust me, I'm not looking forward to that. When the seniors or the junior associates that we have are great, finding them is not great. So that's a problem you want to avoid as a multiple practice owner for sure.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about, just real quick, we're out of time, but what are the demographics in the area that you started your first practice on? What, as far as like a doctor to patient ratio, is that in Jonesboro?
In Jonesboro, it depends on what you call Jonesboro. If you call the city limits, it's probably less than 1 to 2,000. And I think if you listen to the right people, that number doesn't matter as much as certain other things that make up a demographic. And let me briefly go into that. I think if you look at demographics, or I do, in two different ways from different people I've been taught. One is mainly from Breakaway and Dr. Luna. One, you're looking at your competition. A demographic it doesn't matter if the two guys next to you are not marketing, if they're not
Mm-hmm.
doing the things that you do, if they don't offer the services you do. So that matters a lot more than the dentist to population ratio. And the second is just how many people are in your marketable area. If you're, in Jonesboro and you got 50,000 people in certain square mile radius, then you got a good density. If you're somewhere else and your dentist population ratio is 1 to 5,000, but there's only, or 2 to 5,000, but there's only 5,000 people in the whole town, then your demographic is a lot worse than someone who's 1 to 3,000 with 50,000 people in town. So that number is good just to get a general idea of what a demographic is, but it's far more important to know what your demographic competition is, one, and how many people you're drawing from, two. So in Jonesboro, there's a lot of dentists and there's a lot of good marketable dentists. So I think the demographics are even worse than what the numbers may say. If you're talking about the metro, which is probably double what the city limits are, then you're looking at probably 1 to 3,000 on the dentist population ratio.
And the reason I was asking is because I knew that wasn't like this astronomical number that some people would probably want to probably say that it might be, because I know, Jonesboro, Paragould, Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas are super saturated because I was joking about it earlier, but it's consistently one of the better areas of the country to live in, or voted one of the better areas of the country to live in. And so it's very it's competitive. There are some big marketers up there, and you were able to, again, blow through that excuse of, well, I can't do it because it's too competitive. So guys, if you're out there listening, it can be done. It has been done. Dr. Smith, are you slowing down anytime soon?
Oh no. No, I'll be here. I'll be here.
Yeah. So exactly. Yeah. So you have no excuse to not get out there and to start your dental practice. So Dr. Smith, thank you so much for coming on today. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think I should have?
One thing what we were going to talk about is how to make a practice go from smaller to bigger. I think it's a really big topic, but I could hit just with some key points that I thought about when we were talking about this on if you're in that situation where you're a new dentist and you're looking to grow that practice. Let me give you just a few quick. The number one reason I see that a practice is stuck at 800,000 or is stuck at 750,000 and they're making that next leap, the number one problem is always scheduling. Um, you can do 700,000 out of one column, right? But if you don't appropriately schedule yourself and your time, then you're missing opportunities to take the next step. Uh, and the second most important thing that I've seen is getting your most out of your hygiene. You're you can do 2,000 prophies a year and do 300,000, or you can do 1,500 prophies a year and do 500,000 out of the hygiene department. Is if you're not missing opportunities. So if you're scheduling correctly and you're maximizing your hygiene department, I think those are the two best ways to take that next leap from a really great practice doing 800,000 a year to a above average, the dream $1 million or whatever dental practice. I think if you fix those two things in your office, then you're going to see a huge increase in production. That's what we've seen in our turnovers is almost all the increase comes from production and more efficient scheduling.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I just did a self-hosted one this morning for an audio one. I'm trying to fill the kicker in so that I can not have to worry about having interviews in the rest of tax season. And I talked about some of the things I've seen in my clients that have helped them grow. And I had a practice that went from $750,000, is that what you're talking about, up to 1.2. And that doctor told me that the reason for that growth was, number one, was scheduling. And number two for them was actually case acceptance. They worked really hard on getting better at case acceptance, but that was as a whole entire team. So yeah, scheduling, I'm a big believer that scheduling is one of those things you can overcomplicate it, but at the same time, it's so imperative that people don't think about, all they think about is, hey, I'm so busy. But they don't think about how that schedule actually generates that revenue and those numbers for them.
Yeah, well, a problem that we see a lot is that it's like there's no thought behind the scheduling. Okay, I'm doing an MOD on 30 and a DO on 29. How long do you need, doctor? I need an hour. Okay, I'm doing a DO on number 29. How long do you need, doctor? I need an hour. There's no thought into what it takes for you to do that procedure, and there's no thought into, well, if I'm doing that DO on 29, why am I not doing the extraction on 31? Or there needs to be more thought into that chair time and what it's worth, and then also maximizing the time that you spend beside the chair so that you can spend it elsewhere being more productive too. But I mean, scheduling there's a lot of different ways to do it, but what you want to avoid is the hour-long appointment for everything and the single column or the staggered columns that don't mean anything. So there's a lot of ways to go about it, but that's the number one mistake made in low production practices.
So that means that whenever you see a practice that's a potential acquisition and that's how they're scheduling, you're rubbing your hands together like, yes, this is.
Oh, absolutely.
There is a light switch I can turn on in this one. Hopefully.
Yeah, and you don't want to mess with a senior associate too much in their scheduling because they've been successful and you're buying the practice because that's what it is. But if you're looking to fix your personal schedule and you say, okay, this practice is doing $700,000 and they're scheduling it this way, if I schedule my time more effectively, that's, the patient base is there to do a million. So you just gotta, that's a big time hand rubbing, green light, uh, EBITDA multiplier, whatever you want to call it, to a practice evaluation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for taking the time out of your day. I know you're obviously a busy guy, and it's very appreciated that you came on and gave to the other people in the community that are probably literally. I'll be honest with you, a lot of our listeners are probably going to be a year or two have more experience than you have, but you have so much more experience on your practice now, and you're going to really be able to help a lot of people with this. So guys, I want you, if anybody wants to reach out and say thank you, which I'm urging them to do, what's a good way for them to be able to be in contact with you?
Yeah, email is probably the best. I'll answer any email. If you get my email and you want my phone number, I'll give it to you there too. But email, if it's Hunter A. Smith DDS@gmail.com. It goes to my phone, and they're blowed up daily with emails. So I'm always checking it, and always will answer. Be glad to answer any question. Age doesn't matter in this profession. So if you're a couple of years older than me or whatever, that does not matter. First of all, there's two of me, right? So I have a partner, so I have all of his experience too. So it's not like I'm out here on my own with 5 practices. So.
No, you're crushing it, man. Congratulations. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great thing. I'm very excited to hear what is to come. And we'll probably have a follow-up here in a year to see you going from 5 to 25. We'll see how that goes. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Ask my wife about that one. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. Good point. Well, again, thank you so much, guys. Please reach out to Hunter and just say thank you for coming on, because it really does mean a lot that he took a time out of his busy day to come talk to us. So, all right. Thanks again. Have a great day. Again, a big thanks to Dr. Smith for coming on the show today to share his story of how he's managed to own multiple practices at such a fast pace. So as you heard, you don't have to have it all figured out before you go out and buy a practice, but it definitely helps to know how you can get off to a great start. So as a bonus for today, I've created a special guide for you. It's called 3 Steps to Get Started on Finding a Practice to Buy. To get that bonus, simply text PRACTICE to 33444. Again, that's PRACTICE to 33444, or visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the U.S. You also receive updates on the latest episodes of Start Your Dental Practice, helpful tips for owning and running a practice, and promotional opportunities direct to your inbox. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called the 15 numbers that will make or break your dental practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.